The Rockpile Report, the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bills season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And this is potentially our final preview show.
Allegedly.
Of the 2023-2024 NFL season. Guys, we're talking about Week 18, the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard on NBC's Sunday Night Football. Place, Hard Rock Stadium, down there in southern Florida. The weather is going to be 75 degrees, mild wind with a 75% chance of rain. The line, Chris, shockingly, the Bills are now favored.
I saw Bills by 3.
Bills, 3-point road favorites, which is wild to me. Now, Chris, you know what I've always said about taking the opponent with the points?
Yeah.
I don't like this. You know what I like even less? I like the guy. I hate the guy who's officiating this. I hate his stupid face.
Who is it?
Alex Kemp. Alex Kemp his crew has thrown the third most flags in the NFL this season. Not only has he thrown the third most flags, but he holds the widest disparity among all officials in flags for the flags thrown against a home team versus against the away team. Like you look at this, some of these guys, they go, oh, home and away, 94, 105. It's fairly close. That's believable. Brad Rodgers, 92 to 94. He's pretty much right down the middle. 89 to 115. That's almost 30 more penalties called on visiting teams. Great. So just so you know, this is what we're in store for, guys. It's going to be an amazing penalty-heavy, not road-friendly game, which is awesome, in a game that you need in order to make the postseason. Chris, what do we got on the 506 for the early slate?
I mean, we have Fox is gracing everyone in Buffalo with Jets and Patriots.
Ew.
Fox early. We get 4 games. We get 2 each. We have Jacksonville, Tennessee.
Okay.
Early. That's Philadelphia, the Giants late on CBS.
Well, hang on a second. Before we go on, Jacksonville, that game's big for us. I'm happy that it's on in our market because the outcome of that game directly impacts.
Yeah, and the other AFC South matchup is Saturday afternoon. That's national on NBC, or ABC, which you get Chris Fowler and Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick for that game.
I like Louis Riddick.
I like Orlovsky a lot.
Orlovsky's not bad. Why aren't him and... Okay, so if you could put Louis Riddick and Orlovsky together as a crew, how come no one's hired them yet? I like them both.
They work for ESPN. They do ESPN B games if they have 2 matchups.
I'm just surprised no one else has tried to hire them away.
No, there's something called contracts.
Is there?
Yeah.
And then what do we have in the late window?
Fox early is Jets, Patriots, and then the late game is Dallas, Washington. I kind of wish.
When's Pittsburgh Ravens?
That's a Saturday night.
Okay, good. So we'll have
Saturday afternoon.
Okay, so
Saturday night is Houston, Indianapolis. Pittsburgh, Baltimore's got Fowler, Riddick, and Orlovsky. Houston and Indianapolis have Buck and Aikman.
So by 4:00 on Sunday, we'll know what the Bills need.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So there'll be a whole 4 hours that we can agonize over it.
Yeah. I kind of wish I could watch games on Sunday with Kyle Washington because Denver at Las Vegas is Jason Benetti and Matt Millen.
Matt Millen, they're letting it.
I thought he died.
I've said this before. He should have. I've said this before. That man should have been shot in public for crimes against football. After what he did as the GM of the Lions, they should have dragged him behind a horse through the desert, is what should have happened to that guy.
Yeah, like in Back to the Future 3.
Exactly like that. Just Matt Millen and that stupid mustache of his. Oh, my God. Injuries of note ahead of this one. The Buffalo Bills, relatively clean. Josh Allen, neck injury. DeMar Hamlin's got a shoulder. Everyone else looks like they're, even the ones who are nursing something, are ready to go. For Miami, wow.
Looks like a CVS receipt.
Yeah. I mean, well, what is this right now? Because if you want to give it a Goog and throw it up there on the TV, but from just my own personal notes, outside linebacker Bradley Chubb, out, ACL tear. Xavier Howard, doubtful with a foot injury. Our offensive guard Robert Hunt, questionable with a hamstring injury. He looks like he's trending to being able to play after weeks of being out. Jalen Waddle, ankle injury, but based on what happened to them after this last game, I can't imagine. I think, knowing what's at stake, I think he's going to play even if he's 70%. Raheem Mostert, knee and ankle injuries. He's... I mean, this poor guy. He's been pretty fantastic for them this season, especially in terms of scoring touchdowns. And yet, here we are. I mean, Chris, that right there. Guys, if you were watching on YouTube, it's there. Wow. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
like
9,
20.
10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, there's almost 20 names on their injury report, and only 2 of them have practiced in full. Everyone was either limited, and I think there's 6 guys who didn't participate at all. Illness, ankle injuries, foot injuries. I mean, it's all bad, Chris. It's all bad. So, all of the joking that people did in the preseason about the NFL being scripted, you remember that whole thing? Social media ate it up about the game script.
Heard of it.
It's moments like this that can almost make you feel that way, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty fitting that the Dolphins would go into a game, get just thumped. Now they're here, and it's a must-win for 2 teams that are, I think you can call, at least this iteration of the Buffalo Bills. You know, since Josh Allen got here, since Sean McDermott got here, blue bloods. To a certain degree, at least in the AFC. We are teams that are always going to be competitive because we have that quarterback and we have a decent defense. That alone is going to have you in every single annual conversation. The Miami Dolphins are trying to establish themselves as one of those teams. It's just you got to win a couple of these in order to really get there. And it's theater. It's poetry. You couldn't have drawn this up any better, that the Dolphins are going to get to go home in a place where they've played really well over the year, and they're going to host the Bills, who have kind of been the reason that they haven't had success. Go back to, Chris, all they had to do was beat our backups and they would have been in the playoffs.
And we dropped like 50 on them.
Matt Barkley outscored them. Matt Barkley came in at halftime and scored more points than their offense. Then you go back to, hey, Dolphins are in the driver's seat. It looks like they're going to win the division, and then they come to Buffalo on a snowy night, and it just gets ripped away from them. With a Josh Allen run and a Josh Allen Superman 2-point conversion, he dives over the line. Just all the dramatic plays that drove that game. And we steal it away. And now you have to come to Buffalo instead of us having to come to you. And that's how things shake out in the playoffs. If that game that ended, they almost beat us with Skylar Thompson. If that game were in South Beach, maybe it ends differently. But that's not the case. They had to come here. And then this year, they come to Buffalo, and they just get squashed. But then Buffalo trips and stumbles and falls all over itself. And so Miami stakes this great lead. I think at one point, Chris, it was up to 3 games in the division.
Yeah.
And then slowly, it's the Michael Myers thing. We were joking.
That Titans game fucked them big time.
That Titans game is an embarrassment. That should never happen to you. If you're a division-winning team, no team should come back on you and win like that. Especially not the Titans. So, with that in mind, you're looking at this where the Dolphins, I mean, realistically, they're still a very good football team. They're very good at home. Their win percentage is solid. They're going to do a lot of things. At the same time, they've allowed the thing that we joked about all year long on the AFC's Roundup. This concept of we are Michael Myers. And Miami's the pretty girl who's just trying to get away and cool. You could just keep moving. But don't trip over that box or don't panic and try to jump off the balcony thinking that's faster and twist your ankle because if you do, we'll stalk you down. And sure enough, here we are. We're right on the doorstep of getting that, that horror movie kill right there where we come into your house and we take something away from you and leave you lamenting all of the mistakes that you made to put yourself in this position. We're right there. Chris, in the 90s, back when our teams were always battling for the AFC East, things generally came down to the wire, like late season games, as to who was going to end up with the crown. And we, as we talked about a lot with tonight's guest, this rivalry finally feels back to a certain degree, doesn't it?
It does. There's a alternate, I guess, Back to the Future 2 scenario. There's an alternate ending to the AFC East episode that I did because you did it the next day with Alf, and I told you I would do it, but I did make mention. In 1993, 30 years ago, Miami went 9-2 to start the year, and then they lost their last 5 games, and they missed the playoffs. So something as catastrophic as that, I think, is about to happen, where they've been in the driver's seat all season, and they're about to lose the division to the Bills.
Now, here's a fun fact for you, Chris. I saw a tweet from Joe Shad, which for those of you watching on YouTube, you're going to be able to see it. What do you think the cheapest seats in the house for this Dolphins game are?
Couple $100.
When you say a couple hundred?
Like 300.
Okay. $345 to sit in the kids zone with no alcohol permitted. $371 to sit. They called it the anything goes section, which I think is a mistake to tell Bills fans that they're sitting in an anything goes section.
If you're going to have an anything goes section, that other section should be called Jared from Subway.
God, I hate you. I'm looking at this going, that's a lot of money to be made on the secondary market. What kind of Dolphins attendance do you actually expect compared to the Bills fan presence that's probably going to roll in?
I mean, I'd expect, we already know someone that's flying down because they have a lot of money.
Because whoa, self-proclaimed millionaire?
Allegedly.
Man, bounce houses make a lot of money, huh?
Yeah, there's going to be a bunch of people that go down for this game. Because as of right now, this is our Super Bowl. So
I mean, it is. There is no tomorrow.
I mean, if we win this game and then get bounced in the wild card, I mean, to an extent, for me, it's a successful season because you kept Miami out from winning the division, which is always fun for me.
I mean, for me, it's just this idea that you're right here on the doorstep of doing the thing that dominant football teams do. You maintain possession of the division and you prove that you're the better coached team. Their offense may have a few tricks up their sleeve. They may have some speed and some real skill at some very important positions, but that doesn't mean they can't get beat. Right? You've watched teams do it. Teams beat them. The Eagles beat them. We almost beat the Eagles. The Chiefs beat them. We beat the Chiefs. We pummeled Dallas, and Dallas took them to the wire. It's one of those things where if we don't win, it won't be like, you always want to be making the postseason if you're a good football team. If you are a good team, you are consistently in the playoff conversation. Look at Mike Tomlin. Consistently in the playoff conversation.
Never had a losing record.
because he's a good coach and he regularly has good football teams. They are sound. They don't make mistakes. We have been anything but. We are getting by more on talent than our own execution. I want to see them go out there into hostile territory in a must-win game and handle their business because they are the better team and that they're more composed. A lot of that will have to do with not only their own stuff, but also the fan presence. I'm going to be interested to see what the Dolphins fan compared to Bills fan turnout is going to be. And so, speaking of Dolphins fans, we welcome to the show Mr. Alf Arteaga, the host of 3 Yards Per Carry. For those of you who listen to the AFC East Roundup podcast, you know him, you love him, or maybe you don't love him if you're Pat Cleary. But in any event, Alf, you are a man of the people here.
Yes.
And I got to say that you have been the most confident guest we've had all season in relation to the team over on the Roundup podcast. And fresh off an ugly blowout home loss. I'm just curious as to your view of the job the staff is doing right now to manage that.
Well, on the road, we lost in Baltimore. How they're handling it. Well, the head coach is handling it, I guess, the right way. And if you heard Hard Knocks, he had plenty of things to say on the sideline. How they handle it on game day on the defensive end was odd, to say the least. This has happened a couple of times. Good thing is that they've always managed to bounce back. They've bounced back all year. They haven't lost 2 in a row this season. And they're pretty good at home, except for that one fluke loss against the Titans. And here we are, exactly where I predicted they would be. Although with one less win. No, one more win.
It's funny because you did say early in the season, when we were talking about preseason predictions, you did point out that this game that we're about to play would probably be for the division. You said that multiple times.
It's on. If you could go to our page, go there. We have an episode right before the season starts. It's called the season preview, and we make our predictions at the end of the game, at the end of the show. Simon agreed with me, so I predicted 11-6 and division champions as they will win this game. Although I did nail one thing. I said New England was going to be god-awful, but I had the Jets being pretty good at making the playoffs. But I expected Aaron Rodgers.
I think everybody did. Nobody expected that guy to get literally to just explode in front of everybody. I mean, it's the...
So you're making that prediction with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my predictions were 11-6 Miami, 11-6 Buffalo. Miami gets the tiebreaker. The Jets 10-7, and I had the Patriots 6-11. So that's pretty good. So Chris Kaufman had predicted 12-5 and the division title. So it's a little bit different.
I'm at the stadium. I'm there watching the Bills game. I go, I get a drink, I take a look at the out of town scores as they're flashing across the board. It's a relatively tight game between Baltimore and Miami. So I go, I get a drink, I stop, I want to go say hi to some people in the section over, Happy New Year, all that fun stuff. I come back to the seats and I'm sitting there and I'm not even really paying attention to the scoreboard. And all of a sudden I look up and it's like they jumped. The Ravens went from, in an 8-minute window, went from it being like a 1-point game, a 1-score game, to all of a sudden they had 34 points.
I hate to burst your bubble. They did not show the score at all in the stadium.
They didn't?
No.
Okay, then maybe it was on my phone, because I remember seeing it and going, what? Because at first I'm like, that's not right. They didn't just explode like that. And then, I go back and I rewatch it. Big plays down the field. There's all these things going on. And there was a lot of good for the Dolphins. A-Chain had a great game. I think with like 107 yards rushing. He was averaging like 8 yards a carry. But your defense was just giving up chunk plays down the field. Bad in the red zone. Players are coaching. Who do you think should bear more of the blame for that loss?
It's a lot on the players, and I could point you exactly where all the problems lay. If you remember the game script, it was pretty simple. The Ravens won the toss. They elected to receive the second half kickoff, so they kicked off to Miami. Miami drove right down the field, 75 yards for a touchdown on the opening drive. Okay, on the ensuing drive, the Ravens had 3 penalties, and they were backed up on 3rd and 18. They throw a screen pass. Dolphins miss 4 tackles. It goes for a first down. 5 plays later, it's a touchdown. No matter. The score is tied 7-7. Miami gets the ball back. They drive the length of the field once again, and Tyreek Hill drops a wide-open touchdown in the end zone on 3rd down. They kick the field goal, and then you can see how the game starts to devolve from there. The main culprits were Javon Holland was playing for the first time in 5 weeks, and he had some really odd comments this week. Okay, he has his own radio show that he does at a car dealership every Monday, and he was asked, how did it feel to being back on the field for the first time in 5 weeks? He said that he felt kind of clueless. He didn't know what defenses he was playing, and he didn't know how to call the switches with Jalen Ramsey. For most of the game, Javon Holland and Jalen Ramsey spent it screaming at each other about who had who and who had to guard who. Okay? So, which was really odd because Javon Holland is a guy that has always been like mature beyond his years. He's a very young guy, good player. He has a C on his chest. He's a captain. It's very rare that you have. Look at all our captains. All our captains are older guys on the team. So I think the youngest captain we have is Tua, and he's 25.
But so then to have a guy like that roll in and go, hey, I'm a foundational piece of what we're doing here. Also, I don't know what the hell we're doing here. That's a rough one.
Yeah, he said that he was rusty, and thus he's going to take full blame. That any time that you saw Ramsey screaming at him, that it was his fault, that he was just screwing up coverages, and you can see it all day. There. But most notably, it was Duke Riley, and the bad news is that Duke Riley had the worst game any Dolphin defender has had all season. The good news is that Jerome Baker's coming back this week.
I was going to say, I saw that Jerome Baker's coming back. So it's like, damn it. We probably could have used a little Duke Riley in my life.
How do you explain a team runs a rail route on you? They get called for offensive pass interference. So you go, woo. Well, we dodged that bullet. We dodged that 45-yard bullet. They run it again and they get a touchdown on it.
They're like, it worked. Fuck 'em.
It's like if Todd Monken said, damn it, they called us for offensive pass. You know what? Run it again.
They're not going to call us twice in a row.
Let's see if they defend it the same way, and this time we won't interfere, and it might go for a touchdown. Sure enough, it goes for a touchdown. They give up 5 touchdowns on the first 6 drives. That's not a recipe for winning. And this team, and I understand that they had the huge comeback against the Ravens last year, they don't do well with score pressure. Okay? Mm-hmm. Scoreboard pressure, they start pressing, and they're trying to win it with every single throw and every single play. And that goes down with that's with the coach, that's with the quarterback, that's with everybody. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they like to stay in the game flow or ahead or just moderately behind. But they fall behind early, 2-3 scores. And you can see how the scoreboard pressure
that
really does get to
that goes right back to the first Bills-Dolphins game. And we got a big, and then you watch their offense just shrink. They had a couple drives where things didn't work out. And I remember one pass that was it was so close. Miami doesn't complete it, they punt, we score. Now you're down by 2 scores, and that is where you just saw Miami's offense become this, like, all the points they'd been racking up, and then they just shrank from there. Now, in the context of this game, just so we can kind of get everything out there and get a picture of what we're going to see, I want to start with health of the team, because another week and another wave of fresh injuries just rolling up on the shores of South Beach. And again, they're always significant ones, right? Now you're going to be without your best remaining pass rusher, arguably most talented cornerback, and some bumps and bruises on your quarterback, although Bills fans are no stranger to that. What do you think the most serious injuries are in relation to this matchup with Buffalo?
Okay, here's the interesting part about the Dolphins' injury situation. They seem to be getting pretty healthy on offense, and they're going to be the healthiest they've been on offense for a while. Their only major injury on offense, look, the game that they played against the Cowboys, I felt was one of the better games that they've played in ages. And people are going to say, they won 22-20. Who cares, No, first of all, it was the Cowboys team that was pretty desperate. They played with 4 backup offensive linemen, the Dolphins did. They went out there with Teron Armstead and 4 backups. And 2 of them off the street, essentially. Okay? And they still managed to only give up 1 sack, and the offense managed to operate, and they won the game against a pretty good team that was pretty desperate. which ended up getting all the help that they needed anyway from the Cardinals, which was insane.
Yeah.
Right? But it looks like, Austin Jackson came back for the Ravens game. He reported, no bumps and bruises after the game, so he's all right. Robert Hunt looks pretty good for this one. So they're going to be down to essentially just 2 backups and really just 1 backup because Robert Jones is the guy that they counted on this season to play some because he was the top guard off the bench. So he should probably be the left guard. So they're basically going to play with 1 backup offensive line who's been playing for 4 weeks already. Okay, Jalen Waddle looks like he's going to give it a go. The most serious injury that they have right now on offense is Raheem Mostert. Okay, he's nursing 2 injuries, but you could kind of figure, you could get by because let's face it, I think Devon Achane has announced himself as kind of a star in this league. He was absolutely spectacular in that Ravens game. Like Miami might have lost 1,000,000 to 19, but he kind of won.
Yeah.
But on defense is where all the big injuries came. Their deepest position coming into the season was on the edge because you said to yourself, you have 2 really, really good players in Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. We are absolutely set on the outside. And behind them, you got how can you complain about having Andrew Van Ginkel and Emmanuel Ogbah behind them with Melvin Ingram, lurking to come in? Well, now you're down to just that. You lost both starters. Now you got all your backups. The good news, I'll give you the good news and the bad news. The good news is that Andrew Van Ginkel is playing himself into a role where he's going to get a lot of money. He's had a very, very good season. He's a good player. The bad news is that they're going to try to use 3 players to replace Bradley Chubb, and I don't think that's enough.
No.
Because, Melvin Ingram is good in spurts. Emmanuel Ogbah has been good before. And Cameron Good is a second-year player that he's a good-looking rookie, big, tall, rangy edge rusher. But Bradley Chubb was having a team defensive MVP type season.
No,
okay?
and that's
replacing
the thing.
him is nearly impossible. But the bigger replacement is the other injury that you spoke about, Xavier Howard.
Yes, because here's the thing. Bills fans, and I think the Bills players have a real beef with Eli Apple. I mean, now obviously our friend Reed Ferguson, the man literally has never in my presence, and according to everybody we know, he just doesn't cuss. Even he would be hard pressed not to call that guy a dickhead. And so they kind of have an axe to grind with him. And where's your concern level when it comes to Eli Apple starting on the outside when they do, spread the offense out and Kader Kohou has to shift inside to play the slot?
Well, you have a media jihad going on right now because every question of Vic Fangio is the same. Like, why won't you have Jalen Ramsey travel? Why won't you have Jalen Ramsey travel? And I think this is the week where they're probably going to try something like that because they did it the last time they had a lot of injuries in the secondary was against the Jets. And that's exactly what they did. They just put Jalen Ramsey on Garrett Wilson, and they pretty much doubled everybody else on the other side. So I think you're going to see something where, and I was talking about this on my show today on OnlyFans Q&A Live, because people were asking the same thing, like, you gotta get on Diggs, you gotta put Ramsey on Diggs, and I was saying, you know what, you're not necessarily going to have Ramsey travel on Diggs, but you will have Ramsey travel on Diggs and Gabe Davis on the outside, meaning you're not gonna allow the Bills to use formations to render Ramsey either useless or on Kincaid or on Shakir or on anybody else other than Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs on the outside. So it's going to be a more focused game plan and a lot more conservative, I think.
Well, is there any belief that we might see rookie Cam Smith in this game?
He's getting more and more run on special teams, and Vic Fangio talked him up this week, but I don't know what that means. He doesn't like rookies. He just doesn't like rookies. Well, every time you watch Cam Smith,
you know what I don't like though?
See what they liked about him when they drafted him, but he just won't play him.
It's one thing to not like playing rookies. Trust me, Sean McDermott does it to and people will fight me on this. Sean McDermott and rookies is a complicated topic, right? And it sounds like it's the same thing with Vic Fangio. You know what I'm sure no coach likes? 3 of 4 for 104 yards and a touchdown coverage. Like, he just got fucking worked. There's no coach on earth likes that. So for as much as Vic Fangio might look at Cam Smith and go, I don't want to turn a key position, outside boundary cornerback, over to a rookie. Holy shit, man. It's Eli. Eli Apple has a history of just failing in critical moments. He's already failed you once. It's not even like you're waiting for it to happen. It's happened. If you're going to go out there and do it again, then whatever negative comes out of it is absolutely his fault. That's just the way I see it. I mean, I look at this and I say to myself, I understand some of what it can happen. Like, I'm looking at this. There was a tweet from Jake Mendel on Twitter that I'm looking at right now. Lamar Jackson, when targeting Kader Kohu, Javon Holland, or Duke Riley, 9 of 9 for 147 and 4 touchdowns. That wasn't even picking on. That's aside the touchdown that he threw against Eli Apple. He said, I can make hay against any of these people. Now, obviously, Duke Riley, there's a reason Vic Fangio hates him. I think he just stinks. I think we've all seen that now. He's just not a very talented linebacker. But Kohu, Holland, these are things where you have to look at that and say, okay, we don't want that to happen. What schematically on defense do you think they're going to do to try to stop this iteration of the Bills' offense and what they are right now? Given the fact that Stephon Diggs, for all this talk about, Ramsey will travel, Diggs might end up being one of our lower snap percentage targets on offense.
Yeah, I know. And I've tried to explain that to people. And that's why I tried to talk them off of this idea where you're just going to have Ramsey travel for 68 snaps against Stephon Diggs. That's why I'm trying to push this idea where he's going to travel to the side, which means he's going to be on Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs the entire game, meaning both of them. He's going to have them whenever they're lined up against him. But then you're going to have to zone up or bracket the other guy. Now, Duke Riley had played pretty well. And I even got the sugar plums of some Dolphin fans dancing in their head. Oh, we're going to get out from under Jerome Baker's $9 million next year because we're going to just play Duke Riley out there. Well, you saw what happened once you got to game number 5 with Duke Riley. All hell broke loose. Well, he played good against the Jets. He played really good against the Cowboys. He's had good games. He's a backup player for a reason. He's a complimentary linebacker. Now you're going to get Jerome Baker. It's no secret they're ramping him up, and he's already taking first-team snaps, which means he's going to play. Okay? So Jerome Baker will be in that role. David Long has been really, really good. As far as what they have to do, they have to get to some of the stuff, which is going to be kind of predictable, but it's going to be necessary. They're going to have to play some of their 50 fronts. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know what their 50 fronts are, it's essentially playing Raekwon Davis at nose tackle and then playing both Wilkins and Sealer at defensive tackle, and then you're just playing 2 edges. So you're playing like a 52 defense. You're playing Van Ginkel and Melvin Ingram on the outside, or Van Ginkel and Emmanuel Ogbah on the outside, and then you're playing all 3 defensive tackles. Essentially, it's a very big front. And you're just going to clog lanes against the run and just essentially just form a big pile of humanity in the middle of the field and cover with everybody else. So I think that they're going to have to get more basic. They can play some of those 2-4-5 defenses that they have, which is big nickel, because Brandon Jones has been coming on. So maybe something like that, but they're going to need Javon Holland to get back to who he was. And they're going to need an extraordinary game from somebody that we don't know about yet. Something my guy, Chris Kaufman, has speculated about all year is why hasn't, for a guy who's known to play a lot of pressure 5 defenses, why doesn't Vic Fangio use Jerome Baker as a pass rusher? He had a lot of success as a pass rusher early on in his career. So maybe that is the way forward in this regard. Because we know he's athletic. Like, how do you combat a guy like Josh Allen that's much more athletic than most linebackers? Use really athletic linebackers or really athletic safeties to chase him. That's one thing you can do. And Jerome Baker is that.
Well, so what I'm looking at right now, because this is you bring up an interesting point. We're talking about pressures and things like that. Terrell Bernard, our linebacker. He starts off the season, and everyone's kind of surprised that he doesn't play the preseason at all, but he gets the job, and we assume he won it because he's just, you're the only one who didn't show your ass. And then the season starts, and you start looking at where they're going with him. It turns out he's actually a pretty good coverage linebacker. and he's instinctive, and he has ball skills, and you start to see these things. And then you start looking at how they're using him, and you say, okay, so early on, there was a ton of games where they just didn't rush him at all. They said, look, we want you to be an off-the-line, just off-ball linebacker. We want you to cover. We want you to chase. We want you to do all these things. Over the last month of football, he has 3 sacks. He's got 8 pressures over the last month. This is what they've learned they kind of have to do with Terrell Bernard. They say, look, now that we know we can trust him in this role, it's time to roll the dice because we need something. We need a spark. Let's make him a pass rusher too sometimes. I think what you're talking about is that dynamic of bringing, hey, now everyone knows and everyone has tape on what they think they know about this guy. It's time to modify what his job actually is and see if he can't also create some plays for us in that regard. It's going to be interesting. I'm really interested to see how this defense comes out against Buffalo because the last time, I don't know what the approach was. I don't know what the idea was. It didn't work. And the Bills just ran roughshod all over him for 4 quarters. Now, the Bills are relatively healthy on offense. On the other side of the ball, obviously the Bills suffered some losses, but our defense is really peaking. And there's an interesting tweet by Joe Shad that I saw this week, and it's a dynamic I want to talk to you about the offensive structure of the Dolphins ahead of this game. I think a lot of what your offense wants to be is wide receiver driven. So having Hill not 100% hasn't helped you. Missing Waddle really hurt you guys. I think that there's a chance you guys claw back into that Ravens game. Maybe you don't win it, but you definitely make it competitive if you had that interior threat to complement Hill on the outside. Joe Shad says Tua has been sacked 12 times in the last 4 games. He was sacked 12 times in the previous 8 games. So you take a look at that and you say something changed over the course of the last month. Now, obviously, injuries to your wide receivers don't help. But then schematically, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of arguing on social media, which I think New Year's resolutions are bullshit, Alf, but mine was that I'm done arguing with idiots on social media about sports. I just don't care. I care about it more than politics, but less than literally anything else on earth. I don't care about the opinions of strangers. So I just look at what's been going on with this Dolphins offense. There's a lot of conjecture about Tua being a one-read quarterback. A lot of people who will say that very insultingly, say, oh, he's a one-read guy. All he had was that first thing. I think that's an oversimplification. I think that having Tyreek Hill not 100% has impacted their ability to get that, hey, we can take the lid off a defense anytime we want to, and it changes the way a defense plays. And then you take a look at what he's accomplished once the box of the offensive structure gets condensed. His A and B gap pressures have been pretty consistent, forcing some off-schedule throws, and that has to do with the injury to your center. Then you look at his pressure numbers. 3,947 yards, 26 touchdowns with 10 picks when he's clean. 563 yards, 40% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks when he's under pressure. Now, that's a testament to how infrequently teams have been able to get pressure on him this season. But at the same time, now it seems almost like teams over the last month have been able to speed Tua up a little bit by eliminating a not 100% Tyreek Hill. What's your level of concern about him operating? Because, I mean, I go over some of those numbers for Tua in this last game. Throws beyond 20 yards. Terrible. Throws, I'm going to talk about it a little later in our keys to victory, but the downfield passing game really seems to have evaporated on you guys. What do you think about that, both in terms of what's happened and in terms of this matchup?
Well, you got to understand that, first of all, whatever those pressure numbers are, or whatever good numbers that the Dolphins' offensive line gets, it's mostly because the quarterback is creating it. Okay? Tua is not only the quarterback on this team, he's the left guard, the center, and the right guard for the most part. Okay? We are an offense that is really operating with 2 good tackles and a lot of makeshift stuff up the middle. And a lot of those deep passing numbers they need a little bit of context. Tyreek Hill did drop a 97-yard touchdown the week before. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Chase Claypool dropped an absolute dime this week.
Which shocker. Chase Claypool dropped the ball? No, you don't say.
Okay? So how do those numbers start looking if he doesn't have those 2 drops for touchdowns this year against the Ravens? Those are 2 touchdowns that he would have gotten. He already had 2, so maybe he gets 4 touchdown passes. He threw an absolute dime to Tyreek Hill. I don't think getting the ball down the field is much of the issue. It's about staying on schedule. Because I had somebody tell me, on Hard Knocks, how come they didn't show the interceptions against the Ravens? Because it always seems like they show every interception against everybody on Hard Knocks. And I pointed out to them, they've been on Hard Knocks for 7 weeks. 2 of his only interceptions the last 7 weeks have come against the Ravens. Those 2 that he threw in that game. Okay? He had been on a streak. He had not thrown an interception for 5 games since the Black Friday game. Okay? So he had been on a hot streak of not throwing interceptions. So, a lot of that stuff has its own context. He's had a great season. This is the only franchise, and you could hear them all the time. It's as if they didn't have the largest collection of losers since Dan Marino retired be quarterback for this team. And I guess they forgot what a good quarterback looks like. Last I checked, a guy that's leading the league in yards is pushing 30 touchdowns. It's going to have a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio and over a 100 passer rating. I think you take that.
Oh,
and I think you take that consistently.
No, you take it.
Especially when he's having games like go back and look at that Cowboy game. He played that game with 4 backup offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm. But so now here's, and that's a perfect example, because you want to talk about going back as we're talking about what happened in these last 2 games, where I'm looking for some context to what is going on with the passing offense. What I see is that, okay, so when the deep passing game isn't there, whether it's drops, whether it's just simple lack of execution, that's fine. The Bills had multiple miscues with open wide receivers down the field that if Josh Allen connects on any of those, this New England game becomes a laugher. And nobody's talking about the woes of our passing game and all of these things. One of the things that I do find interesting is that for as much as your team throws the football, and then all of these passes, like in that Dallas game, you're 7-12 on throws of 10 or more yards. No touchdowns, 127 yards, and you look at the yak numbers for these players, and they're pretty limited. What do you think is driving that? Because that used to be a staple of the Dolphins' offense, right? You're going to dump it down to a skill player, not dump it. It's going to be a slant, or it's a designed play that's going to draw safety away from the middle of the field so that you can get a mismatch on a linebacker and then hit him with a fast receiver, and you know that that's going to pick up chunk yardage. Early on, that's what you guys were thriving on, and I'm watching some of these things you used to do really well have kind of, like I said, they're just less impactful than they used to be.
Yeah, I think it has to do a lot with all of these guys taking turns, taking injuries, You had Tyreek with his ankle injury against the Titans, he's been battling it ever since. And I guess he's as healthy as he's going to be right now, which is to say he's still pretty effective.
Yeah.
But Jalen Waddle, he's a tough guy. Like he's toughing out injuries all the time. He's had another 1,000-yard season, and it's funny to hear Dolphin fans talk about it. Oh, Waddle hasn't been good this year. Yeah, well, he's been injured all year, and he gave you another 1,000 yards. Okay,
yeah.
So he's been pretty good. Okay, and then Achane. So it's those 3 guys taking turns, having injuries, having guys out of the lineup, and really the unsettled nature of that offensive line all season has been changing up their game plans, and I think has really, really messed with the rhythm of this offense. And, if you're going to get any good news is that, with Robert Hunt back, you're getting some semblance of health on the offensive line. And the running game seems to be coming around a little bit here as of late.
Well, do you have a prediction for this one, Alf, as we close this out?
Well, I expected them to win the game. And like I said last week, I don't care who the hell they play at home. As long as they have their quarterback, they have their head coach, they should win games at home against anybody. I don't care who it is. On the road, now anything's, it's up for grabs. But as far as at home, I expect them to win this game. Will it be close? That's what the Bills do. They play close games, right? So it should be a close game. And I do expect Miami to pull it out. I don't know what they're going to do on defense, but they're going to have to do something. Vic Fangio's going to have to earn his money. But I do expect a good game from the offense.
It's this game right here that you hired Vic Fangio for.
Yeah, pretty much. So I do expect a good game from the offense because they usually play well at home with their offense. So, and like I said, you go back and I think what's their record? It's like 12-1. This coach and this head coach and this quarterback together, starting and finishing a game, the last 13. Tua was 19-5 for his career at home. Okay, 4 of those losses were with Flores. So, yeah, we expect success and we expect to win this game. And if you believe some of the scenarios, we might be doing it again the following week.
Mm-hmm. Well, nothing would make me happier than my team going down there and proving you guys wrong. And then having you guys have to travel back up here to Buffalo to have that game again.
Well, that's an impossibility. I don't know if you understand the permutations. We lose the game, we're going to Kansas City. It's guaranteed, 100%.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Then can we get another rematch after this one's over? But let's just go out there. I feel pretty confident the Bills are going to win this one. I don't know why, because I'm usually the biggest hater, or at least a pessimist. I'm a glass half empty. Or in fact, not even glass half empty, Alf. Have you ever seen that demotivational poster where they're like, there's 3 types of people? Glass half full, glass half empty, and then the third person is just, and it's all like a glass is filled with a yellowish liquid. And then the third guy goes, this is piss! That's me. I'm the third guy going, it doesn't matter what it is, because it sucks.
Well, if you gauge the confidence of the average Dolphin fan, it's almost as if they like this shit. You know what I mean? You got a home game on Sunday Night Football for the 2 seed and the division title. Okay, it's higher. It's essentially overachieving over all of your expectations. Mm-hmm. You saw our predictions. If they win this game, they'll merely meet Chris Kaufman's prediction of 12-5. They'll beat my prediction of 11-6, and Simon's prediction of 11-6. So, you have the game at home. Buck up, buttercup is what I would say.
Absolutely. Alf, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and where they can find the rest of your work.
If you want to go on my on our Twitter page and troll us after you win this game on Sunday, you could go to 3 yards per carry. That's the number 3 yards per carry. If you want to listen to us talk about the loss to the Buffalo Bills on Monday, you could also check all our social media pages, all our podcast pages. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. It's also the number 3 yards per carry.
Alf Arteaga, one of the best guests that we have, because people either love him or they hate him or they think he's delusional. But if you want more of Alf's unbelievable takes on Twitter, under Alf_Arteaga.
So, Chris, that leaves us with nothing else but our keys to victory.
Wow, that's a lot of keys. Bigger the keychain, more powerful the man.
The first one is going to be to limit the downfield big play offense. Now, as I alluded to earlier when I was talking to Alf, against Baltimore, Tua was 1 of 3 on throws of 20 or more yards through the air. Now, there were some drops, there was things that could have been big plays, but every single quarterback in the NFL can say, oh, I could have had that. The reality is that the Dolphins always used to have that. 1 of 3 on throws of 20 or more yards. 5 of 12 with 2 interceptions on throws of 10-plus yards. So in that 10 to 20 window, less than 50% with 2 picks. Throwing into what is essentially the safety and linebacker core. The week before that against Dallas, 1 for 4 on throws of 20-plus yards, no touchdowns, and 50 yards. 7 of 12 on throws of 10 or more yards, 10 to 20 yards, no touchdowns, only 127 yards total. And as you heard me explaining to Alf, the yards after the catch simply are not there anymore for this team. They have had a real struggle generating yak, and that's led to some really close games and a blowout loss. the last 2 weeks, the box has shrunk for them. And it almost reminds me of, do you remember what happened to us when we had Ryan Fitzpatrick and teams figured out that he just didn't have the arm strength to throw deep outs?
No.
Or to push the ball up the seams? I do. I remember that first year when everything was working, we gave him the contract extension, and then when teams figured out, they don't have any deep threats, one, and two, we don't have to worry about those threats getting off. Safeties creep in, the box gets tighter, and you really find yourself in a tough spot trying to move the ball through the air. That's, to a certain degree, been the Miami offense over the last couple of weeks. Now, some of this is wrapped up in the health of Jalen Waddle, and if he plays, it'll be better. But all this talk about how Tua was leading the NFL in time to throw at the start of the year, as soon as his ability to hit his first read to a Tyreek Hill who was already in motion and who he suctions so much of the defense to him, and really that still doesn't stop him. As soon as that dried up and people could now start covering Hill a little bit easier because of his ankle, still a great player, but because it's easier now, the explosive plays dried up for their offense. It's undeniable if you look at the numbers. That plays into the hands of a team like Buffalo. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, they have been fantastic at sweeping up all of the garbage in front of them in terms of rallying to the ball on short throws and tackling, limiting yards after the catch, limiting downfield plays, creating pressure when quarterbacks do try to take downfield throws in order to make the throws a little bit more difficult. All of those things, like Chris, nobody has moved the ball quickly on this defense over the course of the last month. Our opponents have had to put on, when they do score, a lot of 10, 11, 12, 13 play drives. That gives you more opportunity for negative plays. And it hasn't been getting them beaten despite, Patrick Mahomes and CeeDee Lamb's skill levels. You're not getting beat deep. No one's getting behind your defense. Things are going relatively well for you in this regard. I just look at what's happening here, and I think that if we can limit Tua's ability to push the ball down the field, whether that's, if you think you have somebody a sort of injured Tyreek Hill, Chris, how do you match up with him at cornerback? I almost feel like Douglas on him might be a mistake because Douglas isn't fast. He's big, he's physical, he's not fast.
He could set his house on fire.
Someone sent me a picture from Twitter, and it was a quote tweet of the photo of Tyreek Hill's house on fire. And it was just Sean McDermott wearing like a turban and a big like shawl. Jesus Christ, guys, what are we doing?
It's the internet. You can do anything on the internet.
Yeah, just ask Jeffrey Epstein. So, I think that there's going to be opportunities here for our defense to kind of limit that, and if we can do it and we can force them to have to dink and dunk and have to make plays, kind of short plays and matriculate an offense down the field, that'll play directly into our favor because this is a game that you can't afford to let get out of hand. You can't give up explosive plays because I just don't see us having the ability to replicate that on the other side. Now, if we're going to move the ball, it's going to be because of this. Chris, the graphic that you're showing everybody right now, that's Dalton Kincaid's passing chart against the New England Patriots. The Dolphins are going to commit a lot of resources and pressure to slowing down the Bills' wide receivers. They're a group that doesn't separate well right now, our wide receivers. And Shakir might be the only explosive guy we have at the position. Davis is good for a big play if they can get that working. Some deep crosses, some deep a post route or two. But what I do know is that the middle of the Dolphins' defense, now obviously Duke Riley's not going to be out there, which is disappointing, but they just got devastated by the Ravens, just tight ends and running backs in the passing game. And a lot of that was because the Dolphins felt like they had no choice but to commit resources to those wide receivers. They said, look, their wide receiving talent is enough that we can't commit extra safeties to protecting our linebackers, to protecting the middle of the field. If we do, we're going to pick one safety and have him man up on a tight end and just hope that mismatch doesn't burn us. Isaiah Likely, who's not anywhere near the same talent as Dalton Kincaid, 2 for 2 against Javon Holland for 40-plus yards and 2 touchdowns. Running back Justice Hill, 5 of 5 through the air, 4 of those coming against Duke Riley for 3 first downs and a touchdown. Justice Hill ain't James Cook. James Cook is a much better player than him. If you factor in that Miami isn't going to play pure man because of Allen's legs, and isn't going to sit back in a passive zone and not try to pressure Allen, there's going to be plays to be made in the middle of the field. And I think Kincaid and to a lesser extent Knox and then Cook are kind of the key to moving the football in this game. We talked during our recap show about what I think's going on with Stephon Diggs. I'm not willing to count on him for much. Maybe a crucial third down conversion, maybe a big catch here and there, or a nice catch and run on like a swing or a screen. I'm not expecting Gabe Davis. I'm not expecting Stephon Diggs. I'm not expecting Khalil Shakir to be the engines that drive this offense to actual success this weekend. Now again, maybe I'm high. Maybe I've had too many Montuckies. But I think that this is a game you have to look at your investment in these tight ends for this 12 personnel thing, but then knowing that you can also play 11 personnel with those same guys. And you can say to yourself, this is where my biggest mismatch is. I have to lean into that as an offensive coordinator. Have to. It allows me to do a lot of things off play action, which obviously helps. What did they say? Lamar Jackson ran play action on 36% of his plays last week and just decimated the Dolphins. Joe Brady had Josh Allen running a lot of play action early on when he first took over. I feel like this is a good time to get back to that. And then we just got to clean up the mental mistakes. Look at this. I mean, I feel like this is the most elementary one out of all of them. Three drops by three different players against New England this past weekend. That was our highest total since the Kansas City game where we had 2. Allen just missing wide open targets because the offensive line isn't getting the protection they need, and it speeds Josh Allen's internal clock up. And instead of looking to find the wide open Khalil Shakir, or instead of seeing Dalton Kincaid breaking open late on a play, he's just winging it. Or he's taking off and he's running. Pass catchers, right? Just struggling to get off press coverage or tight coverage as soon as New England's DBs got their hands on them. That was a big problem in that game. It's the interior offensive line struggling. It was bad. The tackles combined for 1 pressure, but the guards gave up 6 pressures, 1 sack, and 4 quarterback hurries. That can't happen again. Like, Allen takes the blame when he says things like, well, the ball just wasn't coming out of my hand well, and blah, 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 blah. Chris, what does that mean? It wasn't coming out of my hand well.
I don't know what that means. Throw the ball, you fuck.
I think that group right there, Torrance, McGovern, Mitch Morse, you have all these little pockets of people on the team, whether it's the pass catchers, whether it's Josh, whether it's the interior offensive line. Everyone has to collectively get their shit together. Find some composure. If you can do that for 3 out of 4 quarters, 3 out of 4, that's probably enough to net you a W in this game. Because Josh Allen, when he's protected and he's got time and Joe Brady is on point, it's that Eagles game, Chris. It's like, hey, look, here's a defense that's not exactly elite. It's not a top 10 defense. So let's go get them. Let's treat them like they're not an elite defense. Let's kind of show, especially one with a depleted defensive line. They're now going to have to do some things that are out of structure for them just to try to cobble together. Hey, let's try to patchwork something together here to stop Josh Allen. If everybody can get their composure together, I can't have Latavius Murray dropping an easy first down catch and run. That can't happen again. This is it. This is the game for your season. I'd like to think that they're up to the task. Hopefully they prove us right. Guys, this has been fun. I'm almost nervous to try to make a prediction, Chris. What do you think?
Bills by a tutty.
You think by a full touchdown?
Yeah.
Wow. I think Bills at the gun. It's going to be another game like when they came here. Because that's divisional games, baby. It's going to be tight. I think the refs are going to do just enough to keep Miami in it. And I think that late we're going to have to make some magic. And it's going to be a long field goal, something that has been the bane of the Bills season. Tyler Bass is going to redeem himself on a game-winning field goal. God, I can't wait. It's that nervous excitement. But this is what it's all about, right, Chris? Like, The rivalry is back. This nervous energy, I imagine this is how my father felt, right?
Yeah.
How your father felt. How all of our fathers felt watching them back in the 90s. Although some of you were old enough, Terry. I think he was probably my father's age then.
Most likely.
Terry, we love you. Guys, this has been fun. I don't know, I feel like this is the end of the movie Ghostbusters. We're about to cross the streams. It's just like, hey, I'll see you on the other side. Guys, I'm Drew Gear, that's Chris Kruger, and this has been your Week 18 preview.